If I was to ask you, are you happy? What would you say? Now, most of us would say yes, but what would your answer be if I said, could you be happier than you are right now? And if so, why aren't you? Think about the significance of this for a moment. It begs the question, why aren't we all happier? When you think about it really, nobody has ever done anything to make themselves worse off. They may have made a mistake, but everyone does actions with the intention to make themselves happier, to get what they want, and to live a good life. So why are so many of us unhappy? I mean, there's an abundance of books and videos out there about how to make yourself happier. But I think we're missing the most important point. Exterior information is great, but are you listening to yourself? Really ponder over this for a second. Are you listening to yourself? Listening to yourself and looking within is the essence of spirituality. And today, more than ever, people are looking for something more, flocking towards spiritual teachings to raise their level of consciousness, to be more at peace and mindful within themselves, and to reach the end goal of enlightenment. So, how do we listen to ourselves on a higher level, and how does this process get us what we want faster? In my experience, the fastest way to get what you want is to use the process of Samyama to be in Samadhi with your object of desire. So, what are Samyama and Samadhi? Well, Samyama is the process of study that you do on an object of desire. You concentrate on it intensely, and you go through this process of study to eventually become one with the thing you desire. When this happens and you become one with it, you are in Samadhi with the object of desire. Here is the exact definition of Samadhi. Samadhi is when the observer, the act of observation, and the thing being observed all become one. For example, a student in medical school goes through this process of Samyama in order to become a doctor. He studies and hones his skills until one day he gets his certificate and he becomes that doctor. At that moment, he becomes one with being the doctor. He is in Samadhi with being a doctor, and thus is inseparable from it. The observer in this case is the medical student. The thing being observed is how to become a doctor. And so, the medical student observing the process of becoming a doctor is the act of observation. Doing Samyama on something implies that you are separate from that thing. But Samyama culminates in Samadhi. In other words, it leads to Samadhi. To help you get an emotional understanding of this, realize that you are in Samadhi with yourself. You don't feel separate from yourself, and you don't have any doubt in your mind about it. However, there are levels to the self, and you begin to do Samyama on yourself, for example, when you are trying to become more. That is because you aren't yet one with the version of yourself that is more than what you are currently right now. For example, I recently did Samyama on confidence so that I could eventually become that confidence. I noticed that my lack of true confidence was becoming a major obstacle on my road to achieving my main desires. It was debilitating and it really affected my mental health. I read books and I did Samyama on myself and on my desires so that I could uncover what was stopping me from being one with the version of myself who has that confidence. And then it happened. After lots of study and practice, I had a Samadhi experience on the plane on my way back from the Christmas holidays. What occurred to me at that moment, the same way it occurred to Einstein when he finally understood E=mc², was that I had become one with the object of desire. In this case, I had become one with confidence. I have become Vincent with confidence. I have become inseparable from it. There was an emotional recognition and connection at that moment on that plane of the confidence within myself. I made it real by noticing it in myself, and thus I am now in Samadhi with confidence. When you get into Samadhi with something, as I did on the plane, you choose never to go back. Now that that has happened for me, I can never choose the desire to be less confident. We are always striving for a better desire to have, because better desires make us happier. This is self-realization. It's about realizing more of the self that is already within you. The self of infinite potential. This confidence was always a part of me, only I hadn't previously noticed it, and thus I couldn't identify
or become one with it.
That is why I had to go through the process of Samyama or study to get into Samadhi with it. The process of Samyama I did on confidence allowed me to raise my level of understanding of it. This understanding allowed me to see what confidence is, so that I could then become conscious of it in myself. This is the process I want to share with you. Many people have had a Samadhi experience without even knowing that they have. In fact, everyone on the planet today, including yourself, has had a Samadhi experience. You just don't know it. Many gurus will tell you that the road of enlightenment ends when you achieve the state of Samadhi. Although Samadhi is a state of consciousness you achieve when you go far down this road, it is far from the end.
Samadhi is one of the highest states of consciousness which is reached by the practitioner of yoga after lots of deliberate practice without break. However, even if you don't have the continuous state of Samadhi, you can and have been having instantaneous Samadhi experiences. This is where you become one with more of the infinite being inside of yourself. This is what I had on the plane when I realized my new levels of confidence, and it's the same thing you have had, but you may not have noticed it happen. It's called instantaneous Samadhi because you access the state of Samadhi for an instant.
These are light bulb moments or moments of clarity. If you look back over your life, you'll be able to emotionally connect with some of these moments. You see this happening, for example, when someone is thinking about something intensely for a long period of time.
Maybe they are stressed about something that is coming up in their lives, an event they aren't sure how to deal with, or maybe they are at a crossroads in their life and they don't know which path to go down. Each case is individual to yourself. However, the one thing in common is the desire for solutions. Everyone is always looking for answers and for solutions. If you pay closer attention to yourself as well as others, you'll begin to see this more clearly.
I'm worried about this. Translated literally means I'm looking for a solution and I haven't found one yet. That's why I'm worried. In this instance, you are looking for a solution which will stop you from having that worry. When you are in this phase, you are doing Samyama. Your brain is observing and analyzing what to do. You may feel anxious, stressed, or even angry because you haven't found the answer yet. You may not see that you are looking for the answer, but you are. You always have been, and you always will be.
And then what happens is, at some point down the line, you have an instantaneous Samadhi experience, and at that moment, the answer appears to you. You may not know the answer consciously, but on an emotional level, you know it, and peace of mind sets in. The whole time you were looking for a solution. It was out there and you were searching, but you were in the process of Samyama, and so you were separate from it. Then, suddenly, you were in Samadhi with the solution. You found it, and it became a part of you. You had been the observer of the solution. The solution was being observed by you, and the whole process was the act of observation. And then, in that instantaneous Samadhi experience, everything became one, and at that moment, you became the solution. To give you a last example, I was doing the process of Samyama so that I could understand how to communicate this topic to you. I am now in Samadhi with that because I have become the ability to communicate this to you. This ability is now a part of me, and I am a part of it. We have become inseparable.
That is the power of Samyama and Samadhi. At every moment, you can be in Samadhi with more of the infinite being inside of yourself. It is accessible at every moment. However, in order for you to tap into the process more often, you have to become more and more aware of the fact that you are always flowing towards your desired state of being and desires at each moment. This allows you to more quickly and consistently get over the obstacles that stand between you and your desires, and it prevents you from only sporadically stumbling upon answers.
You have always wanted to know this process, but you didn't even know that it's what you wanted. You are always scouring for answers because of the innate drive within you to move forward, to get what you want, and to become one with the next version of yourself. Your subconscious knows what you want, and so it compels you and drives you forward to get it. You want to learn how to get good at this process, because no matter what it is that you want, you can apply this process to achieving it. The ability to use this process makes you happier and more powerful because you are able to get what you want faster. You can influence reality around you faster. Think about how you were able to change your reality when you finally got that answer in that moment of clarity. There was a sense of unification within you. Uncertainty was no longer present. You finally knew what to do and you did it. The path was made abundantly clear because you overcame the obstacles.
Look back at a time when you were stuck for longer than you would have liked because you couldn't find a solution. How would your life be different if you'd found a solution faster, and would you be happier? My goal of this film is to get you to not only understand how this process works, but to see on an emotional level how you have been having these experiences, and how you can utilize its power more often in your pursuit of higher levels of consciousness, of happiness, of achievement, and of personal power.
When you have that Samadhi moment, even though it may last only a split second, the feeling of the self you got in that moment carries over and you feel happiness and joy until you reach another obstacle. This is because you removed the obstacles that were blocking you from becoming one with the next level of the self inside you. The self is infinite consciousness, infinite potential, universal force, or God. When you have that Samadhi moment, you are connected to it, and its effects are that of pure bliss and happiness. This is your true nature. This is self-realization. Even though Samadhi may last only a small instant for you, the effects are so powerful that they carry over and you feel that state for as long as it takes for another obstacle to appear in your mind. This usually doesn't take long to happen, and so understanding this process and being able to repeat it is of paramount importance for achieving higher levels of consciousness, happiness, and personal power.
So, what are these obstacles, you may be wondering? Enlightenment, or self-realization, is about making the self which is already within you real. It's the realization of the self within you that makes it real. The light of the self is always shining, and so Samyama is the process of connecting you to the light of the self, which is what occurs when you're in Samadhi. You become one with a higher version of your being. You have become one with something bigger than yourself. This will fundamentally change how you view yourself and express your potential. The self is infinite, and its potential is also. And you begin to understand this on an emotional level when you feel your growth and see what's possible at the next level. This realization pushes you to grow.
You get that feeling of the self inside you ballooning. You're broadening your capabilities, and you intuitively feel it happening inside you. This feeling is so real, and when you truly feel and realize more of your being within you, no one can put doubt in your mind about it. The same way you don't doubt that you are you. The same way a caterpillar transforms itself into a beautiful radiant butterfly, you too will be able to see who you once were and who you now are. You are in Samadhi with a higher version of yourself, and like the butterfly, there is no turning back. We must go beyond the level of mind, and when you are in Samadhi with something, this is exactly what happens. You are able to transcend the mind and tap into universal consciousness, or the self, which is beyond the mind.
So, if Samadhi is accessible at all moments, why is it that we don't all experience this more often? What's blocking us from getting what we truly want, and from experiencing the higher levels of happiness and achievement which stem from mastering this process? Well, the main blockage which prevents you from experiencing this state more often and from making its effects more powerful and more continuous is the mind. And more importantly, desires that come up in the mind. For this very reason, it is very important for us to understand the nature of our minds and how they work in relation to our desires. It is absolutely normal to have desires. It's how the mind works. But our mind is full of desires, and we can never fulfill them all. And a lot of these desires don't actually serve us, but hold us back.
Desires act as clouds, covering up the sun of the self. This is why we want to use this process of samyama to analyze our desires so that we can continuously swap our lower level desires for higher desires, which will allow us to move in the direction to achieve what we really want. The first step is to do samyama on your desires so that you can be in samadhi with knowing what your true desires are. Once you are one with that, you can then decide which desire you want to fulfill, and then you repeat the process of samyama so that you can work towards being in samadhi with the version of yourself who can achieve the desire, and then you do achieve it.
When you achieve the desire, you are no longer doing samyama. You are now in samadhi with it.
And as you engage in the process of samyama, one by one you obliterate the barriers which prevent you from being in samadhi with what you want. When you transcend the obstacles blocking you, you have that instantaneous samadhi experience, as you've had before when you've made a breakthrough and become the solution to your problems. You became what you wanted.
This leads to removing the clouds which cover up the sun of the self. And this gives you a feeling of bliss, because you are experiencing the after effects of the samadhi experience, which is the feeling of being one with more of your inner being, self, universal force, or God. From here on, I'll refer to the universal force, inner being, or God as the self. This is because they are one and the same thing.
Here is a good analogy to give you some context. The self in this case is the sun and its rays. You are the human on the slope of the mountain, and the desires are the clouds. So as a desire comes up into the mind, it begins to act as a cloud, and those clouds prevent you from experiencing more of the self within yourself, which is your base state of happiness and bliss. We have all experienced this when we want something, and we can't rest the mind until we get it.
Think about how restless you become when your mind is fixated on an object of desire, and how peace of mind sets in when the desire is fulfilled or given up. The process of samyama is teaching you how to remove the clouds so that you can be in samadhi with what you're seeking. This makes you happier, and you experience the light of the self more often, which is the result of the samadhi moment. To remove the clouds, you have a few options. Number 1, you can fulfill the desire. Number 2, you can get rid of the desire. Or number 3, you can change your mind or perspective. None of these are easy, and a lot of people don't understand this process, and that's why they go through life unhappy, because they temporarily remove or never remove the clouds.
Just think about how common it is to see people who seem to have everything, the house, the kids, and the job, but who are in fact miserable on a very consistent basis. These people, unfortunately, don't understand the mechanics of this process, and they aren't listening to themselves or connecting with themselves on a deeper level. This leads to not doing what you should be doing in order to make yourself happier. It's not that these people aren't trying, they are actively trying to make themselves happier. More and more I observe people, and I see how, unfortunately, they misdirect their efforts.
This is why I have made this film. I want to help people, because this process has been so fundamental in the changes that I've made in my own life.
The problem is that most people haven't done samyama on what their true desires are, and so they are never able to fulfill them. They fulfill lower, more primal desires instead of their higher ones, and this leads to less frequent, instantaneous samadhi experiences. They remove smaller amounts of the clouds, and they are exposed to less of the light shining from the self within.
Fulfilling the desire makes you happy, because you moved the clouds temporarily and experienced your base state of bliss. But very soon, a new desire creeps into the mind, and the clouds reappear. If you observe yourself more closely in the future, and if you look back at many times in your life, you will be able to notice the transition between fulfilling a desire, the happiness that results from that, and then how a new cloud materializes and covers the light of the self once more.
Giving up on the desire whilst keeping it keeps the clouds permanently in place, which blocks the sun continually. A clear example of this is to observe people who have given up on their dreams completely. These people severely limit their happiness, and the light of the self rarely shines through.
The best option we have is to learn to change our minds. In other words, you must learn to change your perspective. This is because there will always be an unfulfilled desire in your mind. And so if you can learn to change your mind, you tap into the power to remain happy whilst the desire is unfulfilled. This is the nature of self-realization. Part of the process of changing your mind requires you to do Samyama to examine whether you have a desire or whether the desire has you. If you are attached to a desire, then the desire has you. Now, being attached to a desire means that you are reliant upon it being fulfilled in order for you to be happy.
To make yourself happier and to experience Samadhi, you must release yourself from the attachment of the desire. This helps you change your desires faster in relation to what you really want. You might wonder why you'd want to change your desires. Well, as you go further along this path, you see more, and what this means is that you are more and more conscious of what you really want. This will push you to change desires which hold you back from getting there, because those desires are now obstacles to what you really want.
Those desires have become obstacles to you becoming happier.
This process of changing your mind can be categorized by you climbing up the side of the mountain until you pass the clouds. You can now see things from a different perspective, and you can once again experience the rays of the sun and your base state. You may still have the desire, but you are no longer attached, so the desire no longer has you, and so you have risen above it. Climbing up the side of the mountain isn't possible if you are attached to the desire, because it locks you in under the clouds until it is fulfilled.
For example, if your life mission is to become a rock star, then this is your highest truth and highest level desire. You live for those moments where you and the music become one. You become the performance, and you encapsulate all the elements of it in that one moment.
Everything lines up for you, and in these moments you feel unstoppable and capable of more. As a rock star, when you experience these moments, you are fulfilling your main desire, and you are in Samadhi with what you want. Thus, that happiness and bliss shower you. Your goal is to create that state for yourself more and more, but like everyone else, you encounter obstacles. The process of Samyama allows you to overcome those obstacles so that you can be in Samadhi with being a rock star more and more. You want to make the Samadhi experience more and more continuous, the same way Jordan Belford from The Wolf of Wall Street wanted to make the thrill of the Wall Street lifestyle, money, sex and drugs more continuous.
Now, for the rock star, the conflict and obstacles arise when a lower level desire distracts you from fulfilling your main goal. It is this conflict of desires in your mind that acts as an obstacle to you getting what you want.
You may have a lower desire in your mind to be liked and admired by everyone, but of course this is never possible. There are too many people with different opinions, and you can never fulfill everyone's needs and desires. Until you release yourself from the attachment to the desire to be liked and admired by everyone, you will find it harder to reach your goal. The attachment to this desire will be an impediment to you being in the state you achieve when fully immersed in your performance.
Now, this desire will take you out of the flow when performing, and because you are sometimes trying to fulfill this lower desire without even knowing, you may miss out on opportunities down the line to be in situations where that state will once again be enhanced. When you do actions which take you in the direction of fulfilling the lower desire and which withdraw you from that higher state, deep in your subconscious mind, you will know that you are jeopardizing yourself. As a result of this, you won't be as happy. And so releasing yourself from the attachment to that desire to be liked and admired will help you express more of the self of infinite potential inside of you, and this will help you get to your goal of being a rock star and experiencing that higher state faster.
You may still have the desire to be liked by everyone, but because you are no longer attached to it, the desire no longer has a hold of you. You have risen above it, and although the desire is there, your happiness isn't dependent on whether or not it is fulfilled. Having been through the process of Samyama to get to this stage gives you immense control over yourself, the same way the desire once controlled you. Knowing that this desire can hold you back, you make that realization conscious, and you can use that knowledge to your advantage as you move through the world. I can guarantee that releasing yourself from this attachment will make you more successful faster. However, I cannot guarantee that the difficult emotions that arise from this won't resurface. It is at that moment that you must decide to act in accordance with your higher desire.
Another example would be if you had the desire to be a chef, but you are attached to the desire to feel special, even though you can absolutely be both at the same time. You have some perceptions around what being special is, and so your internal construct of perceptions and your different level desires are in conflict, and thus they hold you back from achieving your goal. You are paying more attention to society's standards than you are to yourself and your own desires.
Society wants you to be a certain way, and it's easy to fulfill that role, but this process of Samyama realigns you with yourself. You get into Samadhi with the true self within you, and untold personal power becomes available to you.
This is why paying attention to yourself and to your desires through the process of Samyama is so important. It makes it even harder when you can't see what your true desires are, and unfortunately, this is the case for many people.
Until you change your mind or perspective, the lower desire will hold you back from achieving your higher one. You cannot be at your happiest if you consciously or unconsciously prevent yourself from doing what you really want. This is what happens when lower level desires, like the one to appear perfect, conflicts with and prevents you from trying and failing on your way to achieving success with your dreams.
This is just one example, but that is why I previously asked you at the very start of this film, could you be happier than you are right now? And if so, why aren't you? The bad news is you are absolutely holding on to lower level desires that are holding you back. I am too, as is everybody else. But the good news is that you can learn this process, and you can learn to continually discard lower level desires for higher ones. Learning to change your mind is a prerequisite to this process. You have to learn to see things differently in order to convince yourself to change.
For example, when it came to writing the script for this film, I toiled for weeks, diving into understanding Samyama and Samadhi through the process of Samyama. I would come to new realizations, but still, the ability to fully communicate this topic evaded me. I struggled to be fully in Samadhi with communicating this topic. Because I had such an intense desire to convey this topic to people, I noticed my mind drifting into a lower and less happy state when I wasn't fully able to do so. It was in moments like this that I had to be paying close attention to myself to notice my state shifting within me. I had to look at the desire in my mind which was driving me to want to have the script finished already, and how it was interfering with my higher desire of wanting to best communicate this topic to you.
Recognizing the desires in my mind and being able to distinguish and discriminate between them consciously allowed me to change my perspective. I was able to climb up the side of the mountain and experience the sun and its rays once more, even though I hadn't fulfilled my main desire. I wasn't in Samadhi with my main desire, but I was in Samadhi with the next best thing. I chose to be in Samadhi with the Vincent that understood why I wasn't at my main desire yet. And this made me happier, more unified, and more effective in the pursuit of getting into Samadhi with my main desire.
This is the process of Samyama that you are always going through. You are studying yourself and the things around you. Recognize that this process is accessible to you, and it's extremely powerful. It's the same process that you are already going through, And the more you can notice it, the more you can influence it, and the faster you'll move in your desired direction. There are days when I am unable to move the clouds or climb up the side of the mountain. And on those days, I have to double down on focusing on myself to see which lower level desires I have which are holding me back. When this happens, make sure you give yourself time and try not to stress.
Stress will only act as a barrier and take you further away from looking at yourself and figuring out what needs to be done at this moment. The universe is testing your capabilities, and it wants you to experience all the different flavors of life. You are always flowing towards a higher version of yourself. If you look at the reality around you, nature, the universe, you'll quickly see that everything is continuously swapped out for something better. This is the law of the jungle, the way life goes. And so if this is how the game is played, the only question left is, do you or do you not want to get good at the game? Using the process of Samyama to be in Samadhi with your object of desire is the highest level skill you can have in the game of life. It helps you get what you truly want, and it makes you happier.
Part 3. An example of Samadhi and me. Here is an example of how I have used the process of Samyama to be in Samadhi with the object of my desire.
For a long time I was obsessed with making money, and its presence often eluded me. But as I progressed along the spiritual path, and as I got better at using the process of Samyama to be in Samadhi with more of what I truly wanted, I discovered more and more of my hidden desires. I had lots of them, but one of the most prevalent desires I had, which was a massive hindrance in the relentless pursuit of my goals, was in fact the desire to appear and feel superior to others.
This created a false sense of superiority in me, and I dismissed opportunities that were available to me in my environment. It made it hard for me to ever look at my situation from a different angle, because my thinking and perceptions were so deeply entrenched in this desire that I deemed most opportunities as beneath me. This desire to appear superior put me in constant conflict with the people around me, and it severely diminished the chances I took for fear that they may not succeed. I held onto this desire so dearly that it stopped me from trying things because deep down my mind was scared that I might not succeed and that reality's feedback would obliterate how I view myself.
If I failed at something, how could I feel superior? And if I did something easier or did something more regular, like getting a job, then my mind would also perceive that as being equal to others. This experience shows you firsthand how asleep you can be to your own desires and how they actually run your life.
Over time, as I used this process more often, I saw firsthand how this desire affected me. As I inquired into my mind, I paid attention to this desire. I brought it to the forefront of my consciousness and made it impossible to miss. This allowed me to see clearly and vividly, without interference, how this desire to feel superior would act as an obstacle in my life.
Finally, I had to be really honest with myself and ask myself whether or not this was a desire that I wanted, and whether or not it's in line with what my highest desires are. And the answer was that I didn't want this desire, and so over time I had to learn to give it up, which is very hard because our minds like to hold on to desires.
Only by repeatedly dismissing this desire and by choosing to act in accordance with a higher one was I able to convince my mind that it was in its best interest to give it up also. Our minds have to see the positive feedback of actions before they trust and accept change fully. Don't be afraid to make a mistake. If you make one, you can just put it back and move on. It's just a missed take.
When I got to this stage in the process, I had to really double down on what I truly wanted. Now, this process was not easy. It forced my mind to see things differently, from a new angle, and to really completely change my perspective. And what I finally saw was that I had in fact a much higher desire which I had never really seen. And that was the desire to share stories that help people become happier and more powerful. This is my highest truth, and this is really what I'm trying to do here with this film. Imagine a low-level desire like the one to feel superior, preventing and thwarting you from expressing your highest truth and true nature. When this happened and I went down my new path, I was in Samadhi with a higher version of myself. I was in Samadhi with what I really wanted.
We are all willing to sacrifice lower desires for higher ones. We do this whether consciously or subconsciously all the time. But knowing what desires you have is a prerequisite to making this process continuous. This allows you to evaluate desires more quickly and to swap the ones holding you back for better ones that propel you forward.
Ponder over your highest truth and highest desires that you have, and continually observe yourself to see which lower level desires you have which are holding you back from progress.
Think about the desires that may be holding you back from expressing your true nature and highest truth. And if you find yourself in the same position I was in, of not knowing what your highest truth is, then use this process until you do know. Have faith in it. It will not let you down. But remember, as Patanjali said, practice becomes firmly grounded when well attended to for a long time, without break and in all earnestness. This means that you shouldn't get discouraged if you find the process hard and struggle to get answers at the start. This is just the universe telling you, okay my friend, you want to know now, but I want you to try a little harder and for a little longer. The universe is on your side. Place your faith in it, and it will place its faith in you.
Once I finally understood what was going on inside of myself, I asked myself the most important question. What is the fastest way to get there? The fastest way for me to get to my goal of sharing stories is to practice. But where was I going to find all the time to put in all that effort to get better at my craft? And how would I support myself while pursuing my goals?
I need to practice my craft diligently and on a regular basis, which requires time. And the time you have to work on personal projects can be greatly enhanced by the use of money. Looking at the criteria of time and money, I would need a job where I'm in charge of my time, and I found that the best way for me to do that was to hand out leaflets to all the residents that live on my estate and to offer them services.
I would make money, I would have control over my time, and thus I'll have the time to work on my dreams.
It would also be great training because I would be running my own little service business, and I would need to get better in other areas of my life to facilitate this change.
I now provide services like teaching English and meditation classes. Now, these opportunities were always available to me, but it was my desire to be perceived in a certain way which was acting as the cloud, and it prevented me from reaching my desires faster. I had to give up the desire to be perceived in a certain way, and I have chosen to act in a way that is more in line with myself. Now, previously, I would have felt insecure about providing services like teaching English to people, but this was only because of how I thought I would be perceived in relation to it. It might mean that I don't have much material wealth, but again, that insecurity stems, at least in my case, from a desire to be liked and viewed in a certain way by other people.
I now choose to focus on how to go faster and to do what facilitates that. I have found this to work better. This is an example of someone doing an intense process of Samyama to be in Samadhi with what they really want. I have fundamentally changed my mind so that I can get to my true desires faster. This has made me happier, and it has made me more in control over my reality. The reason this process has given me more control over my reality, and the reason why it will give you more control, is simple. I am now more able to do the things I want to do, which is the basis for the desire of power. I now make more money, which is something I wanted. I now have more time, and I'm happier because I'm getting to where I want to go faster than I was previously. This is the whole point of being in Samadhi with more of yourself. You become more unified, and when your subconscious mind and conscious mind become unified, things become effortless.
This is what our minds want. This is what your mind wants, to get where you're headed faster. And Samyama is the one process that gets you there faster than any other. You get into Samadhi with more of yourself, and you can then do more. This process makes you conscious of the desires you have, which are creating the results you are getting. And it allows you to continually flow towards something new, something better. You learn to continually discard the old version of yourself for a higher and better version.
This is our true nature, and once again, if you take a moment to look at the nature of the world and the universe around you, this is how things actually work. Everything is continuously replaced for something better. This is the law of attraction in action. You get over the mental blocks that hold you back from what you really want faster. Your inner being already knows what to do, but this process connects you with it so you can move forward faster and more effectively.
The reason many people are unhappy is because they rarely remove the clouds. They don't look within and inquire into themselves. And what makes this worse is that your subconscious mind already knows what needs to be done to make yourself happier. And so it is in a direct conflict on a continuous basis with your conscious mind. When you miss out on what your subconscious mind knows you should do, the mind gets disturbed and it becomes unhappy. Our subconscious minds are much more in tune with our inner being. It is also much more aware of our surroundings, and so it sees a lot of things that our conscious mind misses. And it generally knows you on a much deeper level. It knows your deepest desires, and so using Samyama and Samadhi, we can get better at bridging the gap between our conscious and subconscious minds.
When you recognize the process you have already been going through, it becomes easier to repeat, and the faster you repeat it, the faster you get to your goal. The nature of the mind is to have desires, and as you get better and better desires, you'll begin to notice new, lower level desires that distract you from your goal. These lower level desires are barriers and indicators of where you can focus your attention in order to remove them and to continue onwards.
Samadhi is not a result or a one-time process. It is a process which is continuous and one that we will never stop doing. It is the process of making yourself happier, and that eventually leads to the permanent state of Samadhi. It's just that we aren't usually trained how to do it well. This is essentially the game of life, and so I will ask you the question once more. Do you, or do you not, want to get good at the game?
As you practice Samyama more and more continuously, you will find yourself becoming happier because you are in Samadhi with more of yourself, and you feel the light of the self more often. This leads to desires falling away from you, one by one. The idea of this was very scary for me at the start, because I was attached to wanting to have material things, and I thought lesser of the version of myself that might give them up in the future.
My subconscious mind, being much more aware of myself and of my environment, already knew that this was going to happen. But my conscious mind, not willing to accept this, was made upset by it.
This wasn't me giving up on my dreams, however. I still have dreams and desires, but they are much more in line with who I am and what I really want. And most importantly, I am less and less attached to the outcome of my actions.
It's important to note that your ego and your desires are a necessary part of enlightenment. You have to have desires in order to be here. And so the whole process of enlightenment is about replacing a lower desire with a higher desire. This is something that you are already doing on a continuous basis. Nobody is looking for a worse desire to be worse off. Everybody wants to be better off than they were previously. And what this essentially means is that you are already realized and that there is no end to self-realization.
You are engaged in the same process realized beings are engaged in, only they know on an emotional level that they are realized, and over time they have mastered the process on a higher level. Their process is simply more refined than yours. But just like you, they are also continually refining their process. What I am explaining here is helping you become conscious. I'm helping you consciously yoke yourself to the process that is already happening. There is no change to the process, only now you know that you are doing it, when you were doing it all along. And what that means is that you will consciously get better at it. You catch the process in action much more.
My message to you is that you are already doing this process. It's just that you can improve on your technique. Everyone that you see around you is doing actions to try to make themselves happier. But why are so many still unhappy?
The answer is simple. They are either doing the wrong actions or they aren't getting there fast enough. Samyama and Samadhi are the processes that help you in getting there faster, and as you master this, you continually increase the pace.
Samadhi is the result of making yourself happier the next instant by changing your perspective. That is why we see so many of the great yogis and saints seem so unaffected by what's going on around them, yet they are always striving to face new challenges. You learn to change your perspective so that you can outmaneuver the barriers that stand between you and more of yourself. Changing your perspective means that you adopt perceptions that are more in line with how reality actually works, and you adopt desires that are more in line with what you actually want. The mental barriers that you encounter stem from the perceptions that you have which aren't rooted in reality, and from the conflict of desires that is happening in your mind.
Desires stem from perceptions, but perceptions also stem from desires. It can be one or the other, or both at the same time. Part 4. Samadhi and you. Further examples.
When people try new things, they either don't continue because they didn't get what they wanted, or they do continue because they did get what they want. They became happier by doing the action. Musicians, painters, astronauts, politicians, and everyone else for that matter, all carry on down the same road because at some point they came to the conclusion that they got what they wanted.
A doctor may not like being a doctor so much, but he may really like the comforts of the job, and so he got what he wanted. However, the doctor should still question whether the trade is worth it, and whether the desire to have a comfortable life is worth more to him than his desire to do work he actually enjoys. If this is the case, then good for him. A politician may not care for serving people, but is interested in power, and so he continued down the same road because that's what he got. These are unfortunate cases, depending on how you look at it.
Here is a more positive example. A young adult named Olivia may soon be leaving home, but she's conflicted between pleasing her parents and pursuing her dreams. What her parents want for her is for her to live close to them in the area, because they miss her when she isn't, and they also want her to get a stable job in the same area.
They say this will be good for her. She will meet someone respectable in the community, she will raise a beautiful family, and she will be close to her parents. Her parents are adamant about this, and make their views clear to her. In short, they think and act in ways which display their belief that they know what's best for Olivia, and they always have. Although having a family and having a good relationship with her parents is something Olivia wants, she has higher desires. Olivia has the desire to go on an adventure, to see something different and unexpected. Not only that, but she also has the desire to be fully independent for once, and to express those truths by following her gut. These are her higher desires. Although this is the case, she feels strong emotions come up when she moves in the direction that will defy her parents' wishes. This is something she has never done before, and it is really daunting for her. At this point, Olivia has two choices.
Number 1. Olivia can give in to the emotions and the potential conflict by following her parents' wishes. And although she may be happy that she has fulfilled a lower desire, there will always be that big cloud of opportunity that covers the light of the self inside her. Olivia runs the risk of severely limiting her happiness if she goes down this road. On the other hand, she can use this process of Samyama to analyze her desires so that she can be in Samadhi with knowing what her true desires are. And from there, she can see which decisions are going to get her to her higher desire faster.
Luckily for Olivia, she understands this process, and she decides that she isn't willing to give up on her higher desires.
Although she now has to face her parents and deal with the consequences that will arise from denying her parents what they really want, she will have fulfilled a much higher desire. And this will make her very happy, and in the long run, this decision will make her more powerful. Here, Olivia had to overcome the perception that I have to please my parents. This perception really isn't rooted in reality, and a much higher perception would be the one that Olivia's life is Olivia's, and she gets to be in the driving seat of her life. So changing her perception allowed her to fulfill her higher desire of creating her dream life. And only by becoming more rooted in reality was Olivia able to be in samadhi with more of herself.
This may seem like an obvious choice, but the big problem is when people are totally unaware of their true desires and of the perceptions they have. They think they know what they want, but really their emotions make their decisions for them. If Olivia was totally unaware of her desires, she would have most likely given into her strong emotional pull towards pleasing her parents. This would have felt like the normal thing to do, because she would have no other desire to compare to. This would have made her unhappy, and she may have never known why. In order for Olivia to get what she truly desires, she has to go through the process of Samyama to see what it is that she really wants. Not only this, but she then needs to do Samyama on who she needs to become, what perception she needs to change in order to make that choice, and she must also understand and see the next level of the self inside her.
Who you need to become and the change that you need to make to get what you want will be individual to you. Maybe Olivia needs to work on her confidence so that she is more able to stand up to her parents. But you may be able to do this. Everyone is different. You, on the other hand, may need to do Samyama on self-worth because you misinterpret what you are actually worth. Your perception of your own self-worth may not be rooted in reality, and thus it has become a barrier to you getting what you want and to you getting into samadhi with more of yourself.
Your subconscious desire may be to hold on to the perception of not being worth as much as others, and so this acts as a barrier for you in your life and clouds the light of yourself. You should uncover why that is and what needs that perception fills.
Whatever your barrier is, once you know what you need to do or who you need to become, work at it. Do some more samyama and experience samadhi consciously for yourself. Get into samadhi with the solution. The solution is always a higher version of yourself. There is always a higher version of yourself, and you always have the desire to get there. And so go through this process of samyama so that you can be in samadhi with the next level of yourself. This next level will take you a step further until you need to step up once more.
This process is ongoing, and as I've stated, you are already going through it. But the more you refine the process, the faster you'll get to where you want to be.
If you stay consistent with this, the process will guide you to more of yourself. And as you become more and more of yourself, you'll know more and more in which direction you need to go. This is the process of becoming who you need to be in order to get what it is that you want.
On a much smaller level, you may have the desire to be authentic and express more of yourself by following what you believe to be your true nature. However, you have another desire in the mind that says, make sure you please everyone, don't create conflict and be seen as different. You may not even know that you have this desire, but it still holds you back. Although expressing your true nature may be a very high desire of yours, it's easy to fulfill the lower desire because it's easier to. It's easier to fit in rather than face the emotions of being yourself and opening up the floodgates of criticism. Your emotions end up making decisions for you. Although you may be happy that you don't receive any feedback or criticism for being yourself, that happiness will pale in comparison to the happiness achieved by being yourself. This could manifest as inauthenticity in many areas of your life. You may not notice this behavior for a long time, but continually refining your use of samadhi and making it more conscious and continuous will help you become aware of these things.
This is why, as you continually practice samyama, you get more and more in tune with yourself, because you are learning about yourself as well as what makes you happier. In other words, you get into samadhi with more of your infinite self through the process of samyama. Your unhappiness doesn't come from anywhere but yourself. And so the more you learn about yourself, the more you see what will make you happy, and you begin to carve your own path.
Being in the flow, or paying attention to yourself, as well as the process of samyama at every moment, is how you go faster and make yourself happier.
This process is learning about yourself and the infinite potential inside of you. Samyama gives you the tools to express that, to become that, and to get into Samadhi with that. When you really come to understand how the process works, you can begin to apply it to every situation as well as everything around you.
A situation which came up recently, and one which I couldn't avoid dealing with, was when I encountered extreme resistance to doing any work, and so I had to do Samyama to understand why this resistance was manifesting itself. This would help me get into Samadhi with why this was happening, and it would help me get into Samadhi with the solution to the resistance. I remembered that one of my friends in our spiritual group once said that I was Alexei Nikolaevich of the House Romanov in a past life.
This did make sense, and I felt an emotional connection to Alexei straight away at that moment. But only recently was I able to confirm this, and I now know on an emotional level that I was Alexei. It's no longer just a feeling.
The connection happened when I found out that Alexei Nikolaevich was a hemophiliac, and I am scared to death of being cut. Instantly, I saw how the thought of cutting myself and the consequences of cutting myself is always at the forefront of my mind every time I cook. The reason why this life relates to me having resistance to posting videos and progressing with my work is because of the fact that the videos and the actions I'm taking are taking me in the direction of becoming famous, and there are unintended consequences of that. When I was Alexei Nikolaevich, the consequences of being famous resulted in him losing his life. He was shot dead in a basement alongside his whole family.
My mind knows that there are consequences, but it was only my subconscious mind that saw the true extent of it. And that's because my subconscious mind already knew that I was Alexei Nikolaevich.
My subconscious saw the conflict in my mind. There was a conflict about how to go forward in my life. But my conscious mind didn't see this because it's less aware. Not understanding why there was a conflict made me unhappy, and so I had to do Samyama.
Resolving this was only possible because I paid greater attention to myself. I did Samyama on myself. I gathered information until I became one with understanding why the resistance was there. I have also become one with knowing that I was Alexei Nikolaevich. I am now in Samadhi with knowing it.
Now that I know this, I can evaluate my decisions more consciously, and I can move forward having made a conscious choice. That is power. I overcame the obstacles faster because I understood this process. It took me less than a week to resolve this when it could have taken me months had I not known this process. The goal is for it to take me less and less time to remove the obstacles, so that once again the light of the self can shine through faster. This is an example of some of the obstacles which can come up, and so this shows you how paying attention to yourself, i.e. being in the flow, how important it is, because it allows you to more easily do Samyama because you are more and more aware of the problem or conflict inside of you. As you get better at this process, you surpass the obstacles that once laid before you, that blocked you. You move past them, and they now lie in your tracks, behind you, less than the infinite self you are now expressing more of. When they manifest themselves in the future, your ability to deal with the obstacles will have increased dramatically. This is a great way to assess your growth.
Remember not to get discouraged. There is one path to self-realization, and it's yours. Realize that everybody, as well as yourself, is continuously in Samadhi with trying to get better and trying to get happier. You are simply you trying to get better and trying to do better. You have that state. You just haven't realized it yet. My friends, you have the ability to shape your reality however you see fit. I am actively doing this using this process, and I strongly encourage you to better understand the process that you are already engaged in so that you too can go faster, become happier, and more powerful. This is your true nature.